Hello, hello.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to the May edition of the Leader Game Studio Chat.
Yeah.
I'm Cole.
Nick. Hi.
You probably know that, I guess, the folks who hang out at these things. And this is an exciting one. The studio's been busy lately.
Yeah, we're busy. Yeah, busy and finishing a lot of stuff, starting a lot of stuff, just a lot of work happening. But it's good. I don't know. It's summer, so I think it's a good time. It's a good time of change. You know, it's spring. Things are changing. Things are changing at the studio. We had
our pickleball open.
Yeah, the pickleball open I missed, but yeah.
I did. I won a very small 3D printed trophy for winning the initial match with Ted.
Good.
I will not hold on to this trophy.
Oh, because it'll be
I think we're going to pass it around.
Sure.
We're going to pass it around. No, it's like fully glorious now. This is like the best.
Yeah.
As glorious as Nick's flowing locks.
My hair is really long. Yeah, I don't know. We're growing it out. I don't know. I think this is probably as long as it'll stay until I get it trimmed. But for the Ahoy, it's.
Do you have a hair in game?
No. I just decided to grow it out because I think I have really nice hair, frankly.
Yeah.
We can talk about that, and you got to live with what you got.
Well, you got to share it.
Exactly. Exactly. Not everybody has this gift. So.
My sons, a while ago, when I was finishing arcs, I usually don't cut my hair while I'm finishing a game.
Yeah.
And so we were all, my sons and I, we all had kind of like long hair.
Yeah.
And then I cut my hair after arcs was done, and Owen, my oldest son, said, "I think I'm gonna keep growing my hair."
Nice.
And now it's his hair, like you're a similar relative length.
Yeah.
And I asked Owen, I'm like, "Hey Owen, I love the hair, but what's the plan?" He's like, "I just kind of want to see how long I can get it to go."
Nice.
I'm like, all right, let's go.
We'll see. Yeah, it's fun to have. So what have you been up to lately, Cole? What have you been gaming on?
What have I been gaming on? I feel like the last 6 months, I've been like in a wargaming renaissance. I'm like playing just hex and counter games.
Sure. How did your Solium Infernum game? I heard there was a big...
I
heard there was a battle with Patrick and your brother.
So I'll give this proper context then.
Yeah.
So I have been playing a lot of hex and counter games, a variety of like means, and I think they just hit different. They're interested. So oftentimes when we're playing, like when I'm at a show and I'm seeing what are the new like Euro designs, those games they're built for a certain kind of audience, a certain kind of market, and when you start lifting those market constraints, designs get really weird. So it's like listening to an album that's like trying to be a pop album, and then you're like, oh, this album like doesn't care about being catchy.
Doesn't need to be really,
And then it opens up all these things. And so I've just been playing these. I've been playing, just a lot of war games, including doing a lot of async games. Mm-hmm. So Rally the Troops, a platform I really like. I've been playing Crusader Rex, which has inspired me to now. They just put Plantagenet on there, so I'm like learning another campaign and levy game, and then. That has been part of a broader like async renaissance that I'm having, where I'm probably in like a dozen async games. I played a lot of Dune Imperium.
Sure.
A game I have mixed feelings about. I just think...
But you just keep playing it though?
I keep playing it.
Yeah, that's what matters
we were
though.
talking about this, right? Like, so it's got me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I feel like it's so far away from like, a game I really love, but I would play it.
Sure.
Because I'm
very
still,
playable.
Yeah, very playable. And I'm still like, is there something in this framework that's hitting? And then,
have you played Uprising yet?
I have not played Uprising yet.
I really want
I've
to.
played the 2 expansions to Dune Imperium, both of which I think are fine. I think they make it better, but it reminded me of. When I was teaching English, sometimes a student, you would offer players a revise and resubmit, or not players, students, my God. You'd offer your students a revise and resubmit, and every once in a while you get a student who works really hard, and then the thing is like a little bit better.
Sure.
And so you're like, thanks for your B-, you've moved it up, it's an 84 now.
Yeah.
And the Dune Imperium expansions feel the same way, where I'm like, I think they are both improvements.
Yeah, that's fair.
But they seem like a lot of work for a pretty marginal improvement.
Sure.
So I don't know. I'm not in that group. But in what Nick alluded to is in the office, we played a game of Solium Infernum with myself, Josh, Patrick, and my brother Drew as a 4-player game. And I'll give you like the brief overview of the game. Not the overview of the game. That's way out of scope. I'll tell you what happened in the game that we played, and then Patrick can contradict me in the comments.
Yeah, sure. He can come to defend himself or whatever.
I am quite bad at this game, and I like to learn games by playing them.
Sure.
So like when I was learning StarCraft 2, I just started playing ladder games, and I lost my first like 50 matches of StarCraft.
Bury that ranked
because I was like, what does a worker do? And I'm like trying to like figure out like the basic mechanisms while playing the game. That's how I like to learn. And so with Solium, I did the same thing.
Sure.
And so I am really messing up. Like Josh is like, he's won all these vendettas against me. I'm all pinned in. And I am in such a non-threat that everyone just leaves me alone.
Sure.
And I think people were thinking that, and Drew has a similar kind of character when he plays games, except Drew actually like will read a wiki and learn how to play
so he maybe,
And so I think Josh and Patrick correctly identified themselves as the people who know the most about the game and who are the threats. And then they are engaged in fighting. And then Drew almost like fools mates everybody by triggering the alternate ending by taking Pandemonium, nearly wins the game. And like eliminates Josh in the process, and then Drew gets knocked off by Patrick. And at this point, the fact that I have been unharmed for the past 15 turns means that I have like a healthy
You're actually not.
But Patrick has now like trained his cannon on me, and if I haven't lost yet, I'm sure I will lose when I log on tonight to take my turns.
That's fun.
Looks like Patrick's going to carry it. It's really neat,
and
I need to play it a lot more before I play it again.
With people
I know.
Sure. No, I opted out of the game because I was like, I need to play the tutorial. I was like, oh, I'll come in on a different one eventually.
Yeah. Well, and there's all these. So there's this very board gamey logic to it where you have to like unlock this table of upgrades to unlock additional actions.
Sure.
And like in Agricola, it's like, well, if you have more actions, like you're going to
certain ones,
win.
Sure.
And so, but I played most of the game not knowing how to really unlock my third action. And so it was like playing Agricola with like a two-person family. Tough. What have you been playing, Nick?
What have I had to write it down? I haven't been playing a lot lately. I recently played Arcs with one of my friends when they came over. I played my pre-production copy of Arcs.
Excellent.
We all had a great time. And then we followed it up with I busted out Dominion. My friend wanted to play Dominion, and I had 2 expansions that I haven't played yet sitting on my shelf, and I'm a huge Dominion fan, so we played Dominion twice back-to-back with Empire's expansion. And let me say, Dominion is still awesome. I think in one of those, like, new games come out, all this exciting new stuff, Dominion's still great. I think all the expansion work is really good that they're doing. Empire's is awesome. I had a really good time with that.
Dominion's, it's funny because like there are a lot of deck builders, but none of them are better.
Yeah, not many are trying to be as, like both Dominion's best feature and its downside is how pure it is. It is just the cards you draw and how you hit it. But I think Patrick was what he mentioned, like Dominion, unlike a lot of the other ones, still has that kind of like Balatro feeling where you're like, you look at your hand and you're like, all right, I'm gonna get 2 more cards. Those 2 more cards could be more cards. And you have these like attempted high rolls that you can be like excited about trying to get into. And like, yeah, it's kind of just like a script. You know, play my 2, get my thing. But I think, I don't know, me and my friends have played that game so much too, where it's like, yes, it's competitive, but at the same time, I'm like just excitedly watching your engine purr along too. So we're sitting here as like, Cole's super in debt right now, but is he actually going to get out of it? Like, you know, you can kind of, it's much more like collaborative in that
When that game came out, I remember I brought 2 copies back from like the release Gen Con.
Yeah.
And took them to my game group, and it just took over the group. And there were a few days where we would set up identical tableaus.
Sure.
It would be like, same market.
Yeah.
And then we would play Dominion and then just like talk about it.
Yeah.
And that was like, the conversations around the game were as interesting as the actual game.
Yeah, and I do think, I see somebody here, like, I think you just win it by buying a lot of money. I haven't played enough Dominion at a high level to know that for sure. And I do think the thing I like about it is, with how many expansions there are at this point, you can just throw out a market of whatever, 10 different cards that you haven't seen before, combinations you haven't. And I do think like a player who's really good might be able to optimize the fun out of that for sure. Like I know if you just keep buying these, you'll be fine. Fortunately, I play games in that same just like, well, I want to like try to do the dumb thing.
Yes.
So I will drive naturally towards that, which is why I have just so much fun with it still. I think trying to make dumb broken decks. And then what else have I been playing? Video game-wise, I've been playing a lot of Pikmin again still. I'm playing more Pikmin, and then I got recommended the Guardians of the Galaxy video game, which is actually really good.
Is it old?
No, it's new. No, it's like, it came out a couple years ago, and you have like sections that are these little shoot 'em up kind of space scenes, you have your team fight people, and then there's like actually really good narrative stuff on the side of like, it sounds so corny saying it, but like, oh, do you want to like sell Rocket or Groot to this like to the pet buyer, and that'll affect your stuff later. And I was like sitting there making some of these choices, and like there's a timer on them and whatnot when it comes up, and like one of them it was like, oh, are you gonna hide like the contraband weapons, or do you want to hide the animal you stole? And I was like just in between deciding what to do, and then it timed out, and it's like, you didn't hide anything. Good luck. And then like I show up to the police, and they're like, yeah, so you had both of these with you, and I'm like, oh no, like, I'm having way more fun with it than I thought, and like as a video game, moment to moment, not super gamey, but like the narrative stuff I think is surprisingly keeping me in, because normally I'm not much for that.
Well, I am going to talk about XCOM a little bit.
Yeah.
I was, because of an appearance on a tangential podcast,
yeah.
I had to talk about XCOM, and I was playing it, and I was like, why is this game hitting so differently from other tactical games for me? And it's because of the way that the choices like link up with other choices that you've made.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, that guy, he's in the hospital for like 3 months now, getting better.
Yeah.
And now I don't have him on my squads, and so you're making these like weird calculations.
Yeah.
And the individual like squad level or like the base management isn't that interesting.
Yeah.
But because they're feeding on each other.
Yeah, you get just so much more out of it. I guess I've been happy with that. I mean, yeah, especially because I'm often a person who preaches like, I think video games aren't very good at storytelling and whatnot,
Right.
and like I think because you give players too much choice, that's a whole different discussion. But yeah, like the limited story choice stuff, I was surprised how much of it they're able to milk out of it. You just can't tell. You can't let players make choices because they make uninteresting choises.
Yep.
That's the core of it. Beware tangential podcast. Who could be responsible?
Yeah,
I wonder which of the part of the Space Cats family or whatever. I don't know what else is on my list here. Oh, I'll plug it here. I'm watching a lot of Survivor.
Oh yeah, okay.
This has been my most. No, I think it's related. This is a gaming related obsession.
Yes.
I have never watched Survivor. I mean, maybe like back in
Sure.
2012, whatnot. I saw an episode or something. But yeah, no, I'm back in. I'm watching the current season. I'm watching old seasons. I've watched like 4 at this point. What are my thoughts on Q? Dude, good. All right, yeah, here we go. I think Q's gotten very lucky, but I also think Q's playing the game how I would try to play the game. Also, is what I would say. I've also watched the season with Todd, the one who's a cop and lied about being a cop. I think Todd also is correct in his attempts how to play it. So giant social deduction reality show games is kind of where my head is at lately.
I've only seen the first season of Survivor, and you were talking about it at lunch and about like the construction of a false protection item or something, and I'm like, okay, this seems like it's really
it's some good stuff. It's some good
especially
stuff.
because I think if Blood on the Clock Tower demonstrated anything to me, because I'm obsessed with Blood on the Clock Tower, it's if you get the right level of baroqueness, like those games feed off of their own baroque energy.
Yes. And like people knowing too much about the game becomes a like feature wraparound because you're like,
where the audience surrogate is the person making the thing more complicated and not less.
Yeah. So I'm having a great time with Survivor. Who's your favorite twin Survivor right now? I think Charlie could go. I think Charlie Maria. I think Charlie will. Sorry, Cole.
I love that. I love this.
I think Charlie is going to be willing to burn Maria and therefore will win. But Maria has managed to place herself really well in it too. But yeah, no, it's a great show. It's a good time. Give me 3 years and I'll apply when I'm in more of a midlife situation. Give me a couple years, but I'll hit it up. We'll see.
I mean, you're training right now.
Yeah, I think the board game developer career is enough of a selling point to try to get you in there. I'm certainly not in shape enough, but you can train.
Yeah, you can train.
Anyway, enough Survivor.
Love that.
Yeah,
that is very good.
Yeah.
Right. So studio's busy. I'll say, it's May, and May is sort of like normally the calm before the busyness of the summer travel schedule. So normally like we have Origins and then Gen Con and then other stuff that leads into Unplugged. And like the second half of the year ends up being this like very chaotic travel show thing. That's a little different this year because the studio at large is not going to Origins. Some folks will be there.
Yep.
We are having a big Gen Con, so there's prep for that. And of course we'll be at Unplugged. But we are onboarding new folks, which is really exciting. Our new graphic designer will be starting. She's been working for the last month plus. But
they'll be here.
She'll be here next week. And so we're very excited about that. And then, just sort of like oh gosh, where are we going to put this person? We have to build a computer, all those.
Yeah.
You know, all those back end stuff matters too. We have our summer intern who's going to be starting in a few weeks as well. And so we're kind of gearing up. That's exciting. And then
replacing. Sorry, I just replacing. No, they're not replacing me.
No.
No, I have a different. No, hopefully not. I don't know. That's what I learned.
There's a crack developer.
Megan's doing graphic design stuff and support for like all of the upcoming projects
Well, and
that
I'll
we're working
say
on.
maybe this is a first time it's worth talking about. All of the new hires, not all of which have been announced yet, are not replacing anyone. It's just growth. It's just the company getting larger.
Totally. I know achievements. Yeah, I did used to do even more graphic design, and then as the company's grown, Patty's taken more of that under her lead. We have just simply too many projects to keep doing it, and at this point, development and design is on my desk more than other stuff has been, and especially honestly in the next coming months, like design is one of the things I'm going to be focusing on. So I don't got time to be making a graphic for an ad. I need to come up with a game or something. Hopefully. So.
And I'll say like Patty has been the point graphics person with Nick on the Ahoy expansion, but there are all these other things the studio's working on. Like Megan has been working on those things.
For sure,
so,
exactly.
You will start seeing Megan's stuff later today.
Yes, soon.
Soon. We'll talk about that. So studio's busy right now. Basically, after ARCS was done, there was some hiring and other things that had to be worked on. And then Nick and his team were finishing Ahoy. Yep. Ahoy is nearing completion. We'll get a full update on where Ahoy is very soon. And then we are ramping up new projects. So there's a bunch of stuff that we're going to talk about today that is going to hopefully set the stage for the next few months of work.
Yeah. Should I talk about Ahoy then?
Let's talk about Ahoy.
Should I talk about Ahoy? Okay, we'll do Ahoy first. I just realized that most all your games are 4 letters. That's true. And that's all, You're right. You're totally right. Not sure if it's going to continue to be that way, but that is an intent.
It's less of a rule than people think it is.
It's like a guideline, right?
It's like a guideline.
Anyway, Ahoy, what's been going on? Like Cole mentioned already, design is completely done at this point. Development, I was just talking earlier today, is I would say development is done if stuff was at the factory, but because it's not yet, I have the capacity to change something if I wanted. Nothing is actively under development review though. Any changes that are coming to the game and expansion at this point are a number that bothered me the last week or something that I played it, which has been awesome. Some of the stuff that we've been getting then is a lot of our like physical samples. We've also been getting graphic design going further along. I can show you these player boards that Patty has laid out. Yeah. So this is kind of the shape of how things are looking at the end of the expansion here a little bit. This is all Patty's work on the last layout of it, and people who have seen the Leviathan board before know it was pretty dense with information. What we did was we actually kicked off this cool little bonus board up here where it tracks your size and fangs. Some of the color stuff here is not final. These are the giant snake in the background. These are what the boards are starting to look like. We're getting all the art in from Kyle. We also
and you can put this this piece. It's designed and layout. You can stick it down here if you prefer, or on the side, or whatever.
Whatever you want. Yeah. And then we also have some more final art for the Coral Cap with their boat and everything, and some colors getting finalized. Again, just...
this is all printed on the upstairs print.
This is just printed upstairs, yeah. This is, nothing from the factory. All this stuff will be double layered and whatnot, like our old stuff. And then with this stuff, and these were shown on our last stream. I'll go to the coin one, coin cam. We have all of our screen printed meeples that have come in. And people who have been following the project very closely have seen these already, perhaps. Ooh, I'm trying to hold on in the camera in opposite. One thing we wanted to do was just kind of upgrade the game, give people more cool stuff to look at, make it look prettier. But what these also, one of the reasons I wanted to do this was for team mode, which was something that was kind of in the back of my dev brain for quite a while. In theory, it should have completely worked. But it kind of took finishing the factions all the way through in order to realize that it actually did. So in the expansion that contains the blue and yellow faction, currently titled Rivals and Renegades, you'll be able to get rules that let you play team mode with the blue and yellow factions from it. So in a 4-player game, if you have that expansion, you're able to play 2 blue factions versus 2 yellows. And it's maybe one of my favorite modes to play the game, actually. I've been super, in a way where it was like, was never intended to be created, but because of how the expansion kind of had to be built, all of the rules for it just locked right in. And yeah, I think it's a super satisfying way to play the game. There's very few, in my opinion, like good team games.
Yeah.
And an asymmetric one at that, I think is, it is part of New Horizons.
I was just gonna.
I shouldn't have even said a name.
So, New Horizons was the project title that kind of all this content operated under.
Yeah.
And as we worked on it, we were like, okay, to make this project work in the marketplace, we're going to divide it into smaller products.
Yes.
Everything we're talking about,
You're getting. Yeah,
everything you're getting.
Yeah.
But someone who goes to the store in a year and a half
Yep.
or something and sees it on the shelf won't see New Horizons.
Correct.
They'll see smaller expansions which bundle these factions in different ways. If you've ever backed our Kickstarters before, you know, like,
Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed, and you're getting like a crazy good deal compared
Yeah.
to what folks.
Yeah, I mean, again, people who have followed it know the meeples were not even they weren't even discussed on the crowdfunding campaign. It wasn't something we even knew we were going to do, and that's going to be just a freebie for anybody who backed it already. You're just getting that stuff without even having to change anything. And yeah, I think it was a really cool benefit to find just more game within the game. I think it was nice to find more ways to play it. Yeah, like you just said, that's how we're going to split it out. Somebody asking how the suits are going to be represented on the Coral Cat meeple. We are getting new samples made at this point, but they are most likely going to have the symbol for the actual suit screen printed on the side of it. So one boat will have a little red skull on it, another boat would have the little orange compass, and so on. We don't have the samples yet, and these ones aren't exactly final either. Certain things are changing, like the green on the Leviathan and little things like that, but in general, this is kind of what you can expect the pieces to be looking like. And I don't know, it just adds a lot when you have it all on the table. I think makes it sing. And then we can keep on this cam, we got more samples in, and we also got, we got our metal coins. Just 2 of them. I wish I had a big stack to just dump out, feel rich. But we got the metal coin samples. They look great. This is with the light wash on them. These were also part of the crowdfunding already. People knew about this. But this is going to be included with the meeples. The upgrade pack will contain screen-printed meeples as well as the upgraded coins. And yeah, they look super good. I'm very happy with them. One of the types of coins you're like, I just want a bunch of them. Just want a whole stack of them.
Well, and they're large. They're like thick and big enough.
Yeah.
You know.
Because I mean, in Ahoy, that was one of the nice things we could get away with. Was it's like people don't have 50 coins in Ahoy at a time or anything.
Yep.
It's a little bit of a lower amount, so you can kind of get away with the chunkier coin. But yeah, so production-wise, I mean, everything's moving along at this point. I'm pretty much in a spot where I'm just saying yay and nay to things in production. Do we want the coins bigger, thicker, darker? But that's kind of where Ahoy stuff stands. I mean,
So we are, I don't know, probably 2 to 3 weeks from. At the factory, very close.
From actual production.
Yeah, Kyle is like, I mean, he just submitted a ton of art today.
Yep, for all of the treasure is what we just got all the art for also. Which I mean that's also just another. There's been more stuff added to the treasure pack too. Even there's a few more cards in there and a few more components. I never buy the coins right away. It's like. Always add them at the end. Yeah, for sure. Yes. You're always like, I don't need the coins right now, and then by the time it comes around,
you're like,
might as well.
See how they turned out. Well, and also like I think I always have a weird. So I got Skyrise, which is a very elaborate production.
Yeah, it's insane.
I have a lot of feelings about the production, but they have these metal. There's like a big metal key that you give to the player who basically like places their last piece first. It's like this key shows that you're going to get a few more points at the very end of the game. And I'm like, I hate that this is metal. It is a very cool metal key for sure. Not doubting that. But I really like if you're going to make a metal coin, it should be a piece that's like handled a lot. As opposed to being at the end of the game, you're like, and I take the metal coin.
And now it just sits there.
It's worth 1 point at the end of the game.
Yeah, no, you want it to be. You want something that you can fidget with. At least that was important for me. My taste.
Well, I mean, if it's a metal coin.
Like, you need to.
It's the one thing about the Oath coins. I wish they were a little larger.
Sure. Yeah.
And we were those are the first metal coins the studio had ever done, and we were just worried.
They also had more constraints because we wanted them to stack and a few
stack
other things.
And whereas these coins have very few constraints.
Correct.
From a design perspective,
No, yeah,
it has to be a piece of metal.
Metal should have the fish.
Doesn't have currencies on it,
Yeah.
or numerals, denominations rather.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be symmetric, which that's also one of my favorite parts about them is that they have that like kind of fake stamped quality.
There's there's like a globbiness, very claymation to them.
Yeah, very happy with them.
It's just a metal board. Yeah, well,
magnetic,
we'll
so you can play it on the wall.
So Ahoy is finishing up, and usually what we do with projects as they get close to being done is various people on the project will usually be able to take off a few days or a week or something as the product is winding down.
Yep.
And so, like, I know you're going to be out for like a week towards the
Yeah,
end
I'll be
of
out at the end of May. Yeah.
And I'm sure after Patty finishes pre-press, she'll probably have a little bit of time too. So we usually do this like quasi wind down, and then people start moving to other projects, and we have a little bit of a shuffle. Other things the studio is working on, I'll give just a little update on ARCs. Oceans are still big, but it is closer. So I think it should be getting in within a week or so, and then it's going to be a few weeks. So it's not, basically the estimates that we offered in our last crowdfunding update for ARCs are still true, still holding. We're hoping to have this at our fulfillment center by the second half of May. We imagine that most fulfillment will be happening kind of like right at the start of June. So all that is like roughly looking ahead of schedule, on schedule. It's been a lot of fun to watch people play ARCs online. There's been like a pretty active like ARCs play.
My YouTube algorithm has started kicking me ARCs videos, which means I know I'm typing it in too much because I'm getting the.
Well, you're just curious. I mean, I'm actually going to be talking with one of the people the person who organized the pre-launch tournament. I'm going to have a chat with them about ARCs' competitive scene today, which I'm excited about. And it was really fun to watch that tournament because one of the things that we talked about a lot in the studio was how much game there was in the core game.
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting even seeing like commentary on the game where people will say things like, I really want the full campaign.
Yeah.
But also they'll be like, but the base game, it's got kind of a lot.
I mean, I think my favorite part about ARCs probably is just how deep and competitive just that base box can be. Because I mean, people love Root and they like it for the competitive aspect, but as at least I'll say, like, Root is almost kind of funny to play as a competitive game.
I would not play in a Root tournament.
Like personally, right? Yeah. Because I feel like the things in my control are just a little too limited. The faction, but ARCs does have this. Every action in ARCs is a competition, I think, in a way that is a little bit more serious. And because it's so responsive, I'm just glad to see people react to it in a competitive way. Right. Like to play it and be like, yes, it's fun and all this other stuff, but also it is like, there is just something to chew on here competitively.
Yeah, and Root competitive is so interesting because it's so interested in like the faction meta.
Yes.
And so I'm really happy that the draft has been really well adopted in Root. I love seeing the Root tournaments. It's just that is not what like brings me to a competitive game. Whereas ARCs feels a lot chessier.
Well, because I think to that point is like, ARCs you can ARCs is more about how you express your position. Like there's different, I know the mole strategies too, or the different cat builds, right? Go crafting first. But those are still within that faction and kind of like only those few paths. But I feel like if you give a ARCs hand to 4 different people, and like you tell them to lead it, most people are going to play it differently with a different logic. Yeah. It's because of how things choose to sequence into each other, where you can just kind of, I don't know, it's just not the same.
Well, calling back to Dune Imperium quickly, I was chatting about it with someone, and they were talking about Dune Imperium strategy in a way that bummed me out because they were like, okay, you need 10 points to win. So here's how you should be like.
You should always get your 3 from the thing.
You're always going to, you got to pick 2 of the alliances or 3 or whatever. And I was like, I hate how static this conversation is. Yeah. And what I love about ARCs is when you start a game, you're like, I don't really know where my points are going to come from. And you just have to slowly see what kind of
gets that's a good point.
Sculpted.
That's a really good point.
We would love to host ARCs tournaments someday. And in fact, yes, the people in the back studio can say when those tickets go live. But we will be running a limited ARCs tournament at Gen Con this year. And we'll have goofy prizes, and it'll be lovely. And you'll get a chance to just play a ton of ARCs.
Yeah.
It's also fun. Like one of my favorite game tournaments I've ever been in was after PAX Renaissance came out. I ended up in a PAX Renaissance tournament almost by accident.
Sure.
And it was amazing because it was a brand new game, and I just used it as an excuse to like play 10 games of PAX Renaissance in 3 days. And I was reminded of like when you were playing Transformers. And I just kind of want an excuse to play this game.
There wasn't a lot of other people playing it. The fact that there's a tournament here right now is going to. But I also did, top 16 that tournament. So no, it's not. It wasn't just for fun.
I'm trying to diminish it. Arcs will not be demoed at Origins, mostly because we are not as a company boothing at Origins. So
yes.
People should have their copies by then, though. So I'm sure you'll be able to find a game of Arcs if you're looking to play.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's what's new in Arcs Land. We have some exciting back-end stuff that we're working on to support the release that we'll be sharing in hopefully the coming month or so. There will probably be an ARCS Kickstarter update within the next week, I would guess, that will remind people about like address lock-ins and give more fulfillment details. I just don't want people to get like crazy excited. Like you're gonna get an ARCS update, it's gonna generally say things are on schedule and also here's all the little details for things, pledge manager questions and things like that. Yes, May 19th. Watch for it.
Watch this space.
And we actually, if you have wanted to like learn ARCS, we're doing tons of teaching events, and there's going to be, we are going to have a great Gen Con presence this year. So if you have ever wanted to spend some time with us or see the games or find other people who play games that we work on, Gen Con is going to be a great event. It'll be by far the biggest event we've ever done.
For sure.
Cool. So that's the ARCS stuff. Other general studio news. Patrick is making good progress on his co-op game, Opus, which he's talked about before. I just wanted people to know that it's still in progress. There's lots of like little early projects that are being kind of sorted out and worked on.
I mean, I talked to Patrick about Opus the other week too, and I was curious to just get, I'm coming off of a project. I was telling you already, like, there's both all of that creative cool down and then also the creative energy of being able to do anything.
Right.
So I am like, oh yes, Patrick, put me in. Like if you need me for an Opus game, like I'm ready for kind of any new lens to look through because I've just been staring through the Ahoy lens for so long.
Yeah, and it is the healthiest thing in the world to be like, I have to work on something that doesn't have boats.
When
you get really deep into something.
Yeah, I mean that's where I'm at right now is just like exploring tastes kind of thing, which I think is a really important part of it.
And then kind of lastly, we are working on the Oath expansion, which has a date, and we have some schedule, and I'm happy to talk about it. So we should have a BGG page that will go live. What time is it? It's 2:30. The BGG page will go live some point today, hopefully. At 3, maybe. We've got a bunch of stuff to share about how the expansion works. I'll talk a little bit about it right now. And we are planning on bringing it to Kickstarter at the end of this month. So we are getting the Kickstarter page ready. We're working on the design, getting everything going. This is a really interesting project. It's almost totally unlike anything that I've worked on at the studio, despite the fact that it is also like an expansion to an existing game. So and I'll say a little bit about the genesis of the project. So basically, the Oath expansion has been something that I have talked about on and off since Oath came out, but it was always a weird project because when we were working on Oath, we did not know what it meant to make an Oath expansion. Oath was a game that was like designed so that if we never were able to do anything with it in the future, it would feel like a complete full box. And it's interesting because like ARCS, for instance, is designed to be expanded. Like the game has specific elements built in so that it's just very easy to like homebrew, to cobble in new rules, to plug content in. And most of our games are not like that. In fact, like some of the struggle and the work of the Ahoy expansion has been like, okay, so we need to use the word patrol.
Yeah, because we locked in these things a year ago.
And then, you're always, and those constraints can be really, I'll use fun in the most forward-looking way. I think they can be fun.
They can be.
In a kind of puzzle box way. They can also be extremely frustrating. And Root, every time we've done a Root expansion, Josh and I are having these like fevered conversations where we're like, okay, we have to rewrite the battle rules to include this new element, but we have to do it in a way that nobody knows how much the rules are changing, because the game isn't really changing. We don't want to tell people that like
It's just to support.
yeah,
this
yeah.
thing,
So we're not saying like we're not doing Root 2.0.
Yeah.
But if you were to compare the laws of Root from the first printing and the last printing, there are tons of changes. Most of them are designed to be mechanically the exact same rule, but written in a different way that allows other factions
Like
to
to catch
plug in.
another, yeah.
So with ARCs, we built that in, and with Oath, that was not the case. So and I'll talk a little bit about this more in the designer diary that I'm going to be posting. But basically, the way the Oath expansion, the genesis of it was, at various points since the release of Oath, I started working on an Oath expansion and basically always ran to some problem or some place where I just felt like this thing couldn't be expanded. And there was also this question about the game's audience. So Oath has found a really nice audience. It's a good steady seller for the company. But I didn't run into a lot of Oath fans, and that was partially the fact that the game came out in the pandemic.
Yeah.
So like it never had a release show.
Yep.
And then the one place this really changed is I was at Essen in 2022. And when I was at Essen, almost everyone I ran into wanted to talk to me about Oath. And it was so peculiar, and because I was like, oh, well, like I'm here to talk about John Company and like Root expansions.
Sure.
And maybe to like hint about ARC stuff I'm working on. But people wanted to talk about Oath, and part of it was Oath was in language, it was moving into languages at the time.
Okay.
But also it had found some purchase. People had all these Oath stories, and I saw the same thing happen at UKG. And then when I was at Unplugged, people just kept coming up and being like, sign this chronicle and like look at these 30 games of Oath that we're playing. And so I realized as I started working and thinking about Oath again, I was like, okay, there is actually a way of expanding this that is meeting the players kind of like halfway.
Sure.
And then while that was happening and we're working on ARCs, a lot of ARCs was built in a direct, it was built as a reaction against Oath and Root. Like I'm always trying to react against previous work pretty strongly. And as I worked on ARCs, there were things that didn't work in ARCs. So I'd have like an idea for a concept that just like didn't fit in ARCs. We spent all this time in ARCs working, for instance, on like an intermission phase that could allow the players to like govern the world of ARCs and do the, there'd be crises and all these interesting things would happen. And it never quite clicked. It never felt right. So what happened is all these ideas in ARCs kind of got pushed off of ARCs and into this bin. And I realized after a while, like, oh, these are potentially really good Oath ideas. So right after I finished ARCs, I kind of looked at the fan discussion around Oath, and I looked at all those discarded ARCs ideas and started trying to map out what an expansion might look like. And so those ideas have cohered into essentially what is a pretty fully featured expansion. Now, we don't know exactly how all this is going to look. And in fact, one of the things that we wanted to do with this Oath campaign is run it to see what the general interest is around this kind of product, to show people what we're thinking about building, and then to include these folks in the wider conversation about what ends up getting made. So like ARCs was transformed by its own crowdfunding campaign. All of our projects are. And so what we're going to be doing with the Oath campaign is kind of seeing who wants to gather around this project and what sort of thing that we want to build. So again, so that's the context here, and I'll say a lot more about that. I guess I haven't really talked about what's actually in the expansion. The expansion is basically built around 3 elements. So the first element is a player identity system, the lineage system, that allows players to create identity around their player colors by going on quests, unlocking traits, being tempted by curses, which allow them to basically borrow from their power in future games. And what this does is it gives players things to do that kind of pull them away from the question of victory. So if you feel like you can't win, or you actually like the current ruler, you can now do things that will change your player position in future games, right? So that's kind of one system. The next system is a totally reimagined Chronicle system that basically, and in fact, the more I work on it, the farther it's getting away from Oath's Chronicle system.
Sure.
What it does is it looks at the end of the game and it says the person with the people's favor, the person with the darkest secret, and the person who won the game, all of the tasks of cleaning up the game are going to be housed in those 3 different player positions. And if you as a player have all 3, you have to divide them out. You have to pass them around. And then you have a lot more agency to change how the game works. So the player with the darkest secret, for instance, they get to activate these foundations which alter core rules of the game. And we'll probably have a little booklet like the ARCS booklet where players can put in new permanent rules to the game. And these rules might make the game more complicated. They could make the game less complicated. And the idea, or not more complicated, but differently complicated. The core idea is that players can use it to sculpt a game of Oath that better reflects their own play sensibilities. So that's just one little thing of this. The player who's ruling the kingdom, they get access to a new governing phase where they're going to, they've got little ministers that they're spending around. They're actually playing like a little bit of a bag builder. It's funny, you were talking about Dominion. I spent a lot of time reading about Dominion over the last 3 weeks or so.
Sure.
Just thinking about the math of how the coin laddering works.
Sure.
Because and when we were testing it today, I was like, I don't like how it's the current version of the game. I was like, we need to get closer to that Dominion clarity.
Sure.
In terms of how easy it is to
So it's an access thing, like what is $3 versus
Right.
$4, and like how those ledges are really important. Sure.
But the core theory of this element is that we want the kingdoms that players are playing to feel different from one another. So it's not just a matter of like, I have an edifice here, or there is a particular denizen at a site. They should really feel different and give the games very different weight. And then the player of the people's favor is controlling a lot more of how cards come in and out of the game. And that's been very interesting because initially I kind of just used the current Chronicle Evolution rules and put them into the new expansion. But the longer I'm working on it, the more I'm like, okay, we can totally
Make some choices there,
rejigger
and
how all of the cards come out of the archive, how the dispossess worked,
Sure.
What all that means. And then the last pillar is that we're going to be working with Ricky Royal, Richard Wilkins, and Liz Davidson on a fully built out solo expansion that is going to include a ton of different ways to engage the game with lower player counts. And this is because we know that there are a lot of people who like Oath, but only have themselves or maybe one other person who really wants to explore the game. And so I've had a great experience working with Liz and Ricky in the past. They've done tremendous work on all the history games I've worked on. And so we last winter reached out to them and started working on some ways of giving the game like a little bit more of a cooperative vibe, a little bit more of a little bit more player count flexibility. And it was an interesting process because they originally pitched like this co-op version of Oath. And what we've done is we've kind of pulled out some of the co-op elements and are going to probably bake them in to a new crisis system that will work in Oath in all modes, but then the other solo elements are going to be, housed a little differently. And there's a few different ways it can look. They've got a ton of notes on the table right now and are actively working on it, and we'll be able to have more to share about that in a few weeks. But it's just so nice to be working with them both again because they're just consummate professionals, and they just have a real love for trying to think about interesting ways to engage low player counts. So anyway, a lot of stuff. My gosh, I just talked for
is stuff for the
50 minutes.
Solo people that were chatting in the thing. They're like, oh, this all sounds cool if only 1 or 2 players.
Players, yeah.
Just 2 ways.
Yeah, so again, basically the way the expansion is being imagined right now is we're going to have kind of 2 main products. We've got one product that is going to be all the stuff for the Chronicle, basically rewarding players for playing the game multiple times, tons of unlockable content. And I'll say, one weird thing about Oath is that when we've noticed this pattern in our playtesting, Oath can sometimes be a little long, and it's long in a weird way because what happens is when you get close to the end of the game, people start trying to 4D chess their way to victory.
Yep.
But as soon as you get players not caring about victory so much, the game weirdly speeds up.
Yeah, actually you give
and
people a Y objective.
Yeah, exactly, where I'm like, oh, it actually, you're going to, like, I sort of have this dream that like, oh, Oath is actually much more of a 90-minute, 1-hour game.
Sure. Once
players engage it on the right wavelength. And
Sure.
so the Chronicle phase is going to be about building that out. And also, the expansion is going to be kind of collectively called like the New Foundations expansion because it's about revising some core systems to make them a little bit easier to teach, and just bring out different colors of play. I mean, what I really want to do is allow Oath to be as modular as the design promises. So
Sure.
I think Oath's development is really interesting because of the pandemic and other things, it kind of ossified in a particular shape towards the end of its development. And as I'm going into those notes and rebuilding these, I'm like, oh, there was a way that we can like slightly rework this part of the design or that part. So that's thing one. That's the Oath, the new foundations. It's a ton of Chronicle stuff. Then we have another expansion, which is the solo expansion that Ricky and Liz are working on together. I'm really excited about it. And then we have some new smaller products. There'll be more deluxe components that will be fleshing out some of the new components, as well as providing people with hopefully more combat dice, 5x secrets, things that people have been requesting for a long time. And then the last thing is that we have another deck of denizens. So there'll be 50 to 60 brand new denizens, all unique powers, cards in every suit. And those will be kind of freebies for backers. So our current plan is we're going to launch this crowdfunding campaign at the end of the month. I'm hopefully going to be able to write designer diaries for kind of like the next 8 weeks or so. So you'll be hearing a lot from me about this. The first designer diary today is going to kind of go through all the backstory of what we were thinking about as we went into this project. And then in future weeks, I'll be going through specific mechanisms and talking about their development, the parts that are done, the parts that aren't done. And I'm really excited about this project. It's a little different from us because it's an expansion. We are going to be showing a lot more of the development process. So we're not going to be doing like a ton of paid previews or anything like that. Instead, we're just going to be talking about the making of the game and have you guys come along for the ride.
Yeah.
Partisans and denizens. There we go.
Partisans, denizens. Arcs fulfillment. On the boat.
It's on the boat. It's almost off the boat, but it's still on the boat.
Yeah. Keep waiting.
Sorry, you got to keep waiting.
Just still hold.
Okay, cool. Well, that's the other stuff. I'm happy to answer any specific Oath questions that people might have. That's crazy. That's not. It's our privilege.
Yeah.
You don't get to have the privilege of giving us money. We get the privilege of working it.
Oh, really? Sure.
Any root news? Oh yeah, we've got root news. We've got root news. My gosh. So Josh is leading a Root expansion.
Yep.
It is full of neat ideas, and we are aiming for a fall crowdfunding campaign for Root. So Josh got kind of pulled into the finishing of the Ahoy stuff.
Yep.
And so some of the Root stuff has been like, not on ice, but like just kind of slowed down while he was working on usability.
Yeah, I mean, he did like a first, I mean, Josh did a design pass on the first two factions, and they seemed cool with a lot of super workable stuff in there. And then it was like, yeah, this seems cool and workable. Let me steal you for Ahoy for a little bit. We can come back to that. But like the type of work that was very backburnerable, because you're like, oh yeah, I see what this is going to look like.
Yeah, it's going to look really good.
We can come back and it looks really cool though.
And it's part of like what it means now to have more people at the studio. Where we were like in the spring, we were looking at like, really just notes towards our Oath expansion and notes towards a Root expansion. And we were like, okay, we could just kind of put these on a calendar and then we can build resources around them. And that's like one of the first, I think the deciding exactly, like usually our launch windows are like, well, it's about time for us to get something on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
There's always like a little bit of a scrappy last minute character to it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we still have a lot of the scrappy last minute character with the Oath expansion. But it's by choice. Like it's like we are choosing to be like, okay, let's launch this and see how it goes.
Yeah.
For the Root expansion, we're thinking about a world where we do a 3-faction expansion, but lots of questions about that.
Between 2 and 4.
Yeah, right in the middle. And then can you scroll up on the chat a little bit? I missed some of those questions.
Somebody's asking if we played Vast recently.
That's good. I saw those. Yeah.
In the past 6 months, perhaps. But Vast is, I'd say, regularly on my mind, is what I would say.
Oh yeah.
Vast is often taking up some portion of my my brain space, and I'm still excited about Vast in any capacity.
I think everyone at the studio probably wants to do like a 10-year big edition of Vast at some point.
Yeah, I shouldn't want to say it.
There's not. Yeah, sorry. Well, I mean, look, people know a calendar.
They know what we like.
But it also isn't like this is a project that none of us have worked on seriously.
Yeah.
And we will have conversations occasionally at lunch. We'll be like, okay, if you had to redo Vast, like where would you start?
Yeah.
And I love having that conversation because I think everybody's hitting it from a little bit of a different angle.
Yeah.
But it is something that like we'd like to work on. I would actually like to play a game of Vast at some point.
Yeah,
me too. It's been a minute.
Fort 2, please. I'll say I have notes for a game called Camp. So
watch out!
Watch out for Camp.
And you know what people do after they build their forts during the school year? They go to camp.
They go to camp.
So For the question about Oath and players influencing the Chronicle, the whole foundation of the expansion is players
player
have
control.
more ways to influence the Chronicle.
Yeah.
And that means like ways that you can kick cards out, you can bring cards in. There's a line, which is you don't want to introduce too much new content in the middle of the game because it will disrupt the flow of the game. So a lot of the Chronicle changes are still happening at the end of the game, but it is being aggressively democratized. Like we want more players to have the ability to adjust things. And so that's something that we're really working
Yeah, I
on.
think there was, when you were talking about the Oath contents, and if, like you've shown it to me already, the you can tell there's a clear change between the belief with the original, like that the games, the change that the game sees between each session is enough for players to remain invested. And I think what we learned is like, well, they're invested, but you can just get that even higher by just giving players at the end of the day actually are really selfish and they do want to be a superhero in their game.
Right.
It's like kind of where the Oath thing goes. And it is like, no, like, okay, you can become a person with traits and lore and all these other things, opposed to before where it was, you were at the mercy of the world. You come in, you're just this little guy, things will change. And yeah, the Oath stuff is more about agency for sure.
There was this amazing moment where I was trying to figure out why Oath was like hitting with some groups like hard.
Sure.
And then with other groups, I mean, literally there were, okay, so I'm on Reddit the other day and within 12 hours, there was this amazing thread that was what leader games besides Root do you play?
Sure.
And I was joking with Ted, one of our business strategy folks. That's a crazy sentence. Ted, the money Ted. You all know Ted. Finance Ted. One of our business strategy folks. If I work in a bank. So I was talking to Ted about it, and I was like, we could not have paid a focus group to produce as good of information as we got from the what do you like about leader games that aren't Root.
Sure, yeah.
And there was a lot of really kind things that were said about Oath, and I'm like, wow, the Oath is really hitting with some of these people. And then within 12 hours, someone posted have you ever had a board game experience so bad you stop playing board games?
Sure.
And their memory was they played Oath, and it stopped them from playing other board games. And so I was like, okay, we've got these two accounts. What is the thing that is like unhooking? What's the thing that's like not quite right? And I think it has to do with how players imagine their investment. Like Oath tends to really hit, I think, with groups who do more storytelling games.
Yes.
It like plays better as what used to be called like an Ameritrash, like very
little hang slash kind of game. Yep.
And for a group that's like playing a lot of Caverna or Agricola or something, Oath can feel like a torture device.
like a trick. Yeah.
Wait, and then you roll the dice,
and then I lose.
And then I lose.
Yeah.
And so I think for a while I would have had this attitude, been like, those people just need to like
they're wrong.
Yeah, they're just wrong, or they need to readjust their glasses or whatever.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, no, we could have actually provided tools to help them realize that, and that was something that really ARCS demonstrated in spades, where it's like, okay, if you want people to engage at the story level, you have to give them like very clear things to hold on to. And so, the Oath expansion is about like providing those handholds. The other example I give, and I probably mentioned this before, is when I did the first game, the first edition of Pax Pamir, a lot of the game's nouns were proper nouns. So they were long, often Persian names, right? And players would read them, and if you weren't familiar with the period, you'd say, oh, like Shah Sujud Durrani, like that's just white noise. It's just a long name.
Yeah.
And so when I did the small expansion for Premiere called Kyber Knives, there are like no proper nouns. It's like dungeon. Right. Kidnappers. Right. Like
just give people the more simple.
Like Mountain Pass bandits or something. And it was amazing how it changed the quality of the conversation around the game, because people could then put those proper names in better sentences that actually made sense. And I found that like by de-theming the game like half a step, it actually made the game a lot more immersive and then let them get to the theme. And I think ARCS' language, like Oath already has that in its language, it doesn't always have that in its actions and victory apparatus.
It is though where I think, I could talk to you a little bit, I'm talking after the stream now, I bet. No, it's where I think Oath's cards do function very well in that setting though, because so many of the Oath cards were designed, at least from the ones that I worked on, like name and what is the thing first.
Yes.
And I like in a way that I think was really helpful, and like I would assume that I was able to do that regardless of the mechanics present in the game. So you are like one of the ones I remember, Josh, was like Palanquin or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, the idea is I want a Palanquin. I don't like, and I will use the game to arrive at that. Yeah. And you can like, opposed to looking at the card pool, and what you'll see sometimes in like fan oath content or something is like what I would call like variants of other cards, or like spins on other ones. And I'm like, I think people, and it's harder to do, it's more design work, but like the willingness to be more like, no, I want trains in Oath.
Yes.
How do I make a train work? And it's like, Oath can do it probably if you like are willing to use, all of, or just use rules, right? And that's where Josh's job comes. It's like, can you just explain this in language?
But it's about like the game is providing a grammar and then you're operating the grammar.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. So a lot of the new denizens were designed by Clay and Andrea, who are, Clay is our sales director and Andrea is a customer support person. Who've been with the company for a long time. They've helped playtest and work on a lot of games. And their denizen powers are great. There's a lot of really good ideas in them. Yeah. And one of the things that like we've just started talking about is I'm like, okay, we need to think about grounding them a little bit more narratively, because they know how to design a good power, but they haven't. We haven't quite moved to the stage where it's like, okay, let's think about these card names and what the card is actually.
Well, and it's like there's just different approaches. It's the ground up versus top down, and like mechanical. I don't know. It's about mechanical interest versus like. One thing I said where mine is like, I'm like, I want a fuzzy bear in the game, so I start with fuzzy bear and then
when we talk about games sometimes, especially when we're reviewing like prototypes, I'll always think like, what's the narrative that's being communicated at this like very basic level? Like, if I'm telling someone about the game that we just played, what words am I using?
Sure.
And I feel like, and again, I'll wrap this all the way back to Dominion. This is a place where I think Dominion is actually really good. Yeah. Because Dominion has a reputation of being like a little maybe abstract or whatever, but it's actually incredibly grounded in its theming.
Yeah, I think it's much more grounded than people give credit. What else was there? There was another one up here that I thought was good. Oh, I'll get this one. There was somebody asking about pivoting victory conditions in the Chronicle. I mean, I'll have my opinion. It seems like, and the goal definitely is, most of the content exists in a way where you know what you have the capacity to do. They're much more like side quests in that way, where like the ability to complete them certainly is about your ability to recognize how much you're losing. Like in a way, it is like, if you don't recognize that you were losing the game and you tried to win, and like, you didn't complete your side quest then because you tried to win combat. You clearly weren't going to. You needed to recognize that sooner. But like, I in a way that was, I felt it in the one play we had. It was very satisfying. Is you're in that like round. It feels like there's maybe one more round. The D6 is about to be rolled, and you're like, I can do my Rube Goldberg machine to try to get the Oathkeeper, right? Where I travel here for one, I roll 16 dice, maybe I can do it. Mm-hmm. The expansion content gives you lower stakes options to attempt for, where I think less often I was forced to try. Not forced, but like feel like, well, I should try to shoot the moon because winning is still what matters. You are like, I don't need to shoot the moon. I can take a smaller risk, bet on this, propel that into the next game. So I think like the game provides a lot of tools for a player to recognize they're not going to win this, and then just another way to spend it out.
And I think victory is a very funny thing when it comes to board game design generally. I love seeing kind of more avant-garde designs that will say things like, there is no winner, or whatever.
Sure.
And I think that there's a lot of value to that, but to me it's still like, it's like cooking without salt.
Yeah,
I'm like,
hard.
This is like the desire for victory is such a powerful ingredient.
Yeah.
And you can use it to do really interesting things while not being overwhelmed by it. And like which is why like I love the fact that like Oath has a victor.
Yeah.
But I wanted the players to be asking themselves like, what does that victory entail, and what are the kind of like ripple effects of it?
Yeah.
So those are all things that we're going to be talking about a bunch in the coming weeks. So again, these are busy times. There's a link, I think, in the chat if you want to sign up to be notified about the crowdfunding campaign. Assuming the BGG page is up, I'm going to go post my designer diary so people can start reading about it. Our general plan over the next few weeks is we're going to be publishing designer diaries and kind of getting stuff ready for the crowdfunding campaign. Our crowdfunding campaigns, I'll just say this again, we like to run our crowdfunding campaigns as celebrations about work that we're doing and also about the work ahead of us. It's the big breakfast before the barn raising. And so this is a place where we're wanting to just like get everybody together who wants to see this thing get built. It's going to be an unfussy campaign. There aren't going to be like a million pledge levels or anything like that. It won't be very long. And we hope to see you for it because I can't wait to get into it. Any final hair tips?
Nothing too crazy. No, shampoo, condition. I'll throw my product up later. I'm not getting sponsored. They're not getting anything free from me.
Yeah, that's
I'll wait till we're sponsored.
Perfect. All right. Well, hey, thank you all for joining in, and we will see you for the June chat.
Yeah. Oh, I'll throw it out here. I almost forgot. Planning to do a team game stream for the Ahoy. Ahoy, right at the end here. Also, keep your eye on the space. We'll announce a stream for the team mode for Ahoy.
Yeah. This is an information dense.
A lot of
stream.
stuff to remember, but there'll be a link. You guys will see it. So.
Yeah, that's fine. All right. Hey, take care, everybody.
See you on the BGG page.